We have been divinely ordained to build in New England a city upon a hill. They weren't interested in God, they just wanted an excuse to see some slopes. The people from Boston, Lincolnshire, they set up a new university, which they called Harvard. And here's the amazing thing. Now, and this is a tragic thing, if you ask people from Boston, Massachusetts, most of them have never heard of Boston, Lincolnshire, which must be such a pain, being from a place with the same name as one of the most famous cities in the world. People ask where you're from, and you say where you're from, and they must go, oh, wow, you're from there. And you have to go, no, not that one. But the Puritans who stayed behind became even more rebellious, and Boston became a classic case, really, of why there was a civil war in the country. Because in the 1620s, the king demanded that people should pay extra loans and taxes to fund his wars, and 8 local commissioners were jailed for refusing to pay it. So the Lord Lincoln, who was in charge of collecting this money, was put in jail for not collecting it. Now, that's a fantastic rule, isn't it? That if you refuse to pay the bill, the collector gets jailed. Wouldn't that be brilliant if you started getting letters from bailiffs and that, saying, Dear Mr Steele, we are informed by N-Power you owe the sum of £86.53 for an unpaid gas bill. If you do not pay this sum in full within 7 days, I shall be put in jail. That'd be fantastic. So Boston was crucial to Parliament during the Civil War. Some of the immigrants even came back from Massachusetts to support Cromwell against the King. And even when most of Lincolnshire was taken by Royalists, Boston resisted. One of the most important battles of the whole of this area, I think, was when some Royalists came over from Holland to help the King, but parliamentary troops from Boston went and seized these Royalists in Skegness, and they took them prisoner, right? And then the king went berserk and ordered Lord Heron to recapture them. But then when Lord Heron got to Boston, he was arrested as well, and he was sent to the Tower of London. So at this point, the king made it illegal to aid Boston. Now, the people I feel most sorry for here, I'm afraid, are the Dutch royalists. They've arrived in England and they've seen 2 things, jail and Skegness. But so you've had a huge impact on the world then, Boston. And one of the sort of amazing things of how Boston has changed over the years is that here's Boston responsible for people going out into the world and changing the rest of the world. And it's clearly happened the other way. Now people over the last few years have come here, many of them to work on the farms. There's thousands of Poles, Portuguese, 65 languages I was reading in the area. Must be fairly obvious to tell who's from which area. The Poles must be the ones who go, Skegness is so warm. And the Dutch are the ones that go, Boston has too many hills. And the Albanians go, Eclipse is so posh. I see how it must be hard. You know, if you've got sort of people who are in a Boston area who've been very uneasy about people coming in, they must sort of find it hard if someone comes in and they're from the other side of the river. They must be sitting there going, Latvia? Was that the other side of Donington? That must be... I also think the hardest argument I ever had to deal with in arguing with someone about immigration, and I don't know now what the answer is, because I was in this pub and this bloke started saying to me, he said, I'll tell you who annoys me, right, is them Kosovans, right? They come over here, they work on the buildings for next to nothing, and they undermine a British labourer's wage rates. That's what they do, because they work for nothing. I said, oh, come on, mate, I don't think it happens all that much, does it? He said, it bloody does, mate, because I employ them. Also, there is something that's a bit cheeky about Boston complaining about immigration, really, the history of Boston. If immigrants come over here and they then dominate the whole of the pedestrianised precinct, setting up their own colony and turning the stump into a Catholic church, and they rename it after the small town near Gdansk that they come from, and all the people who already live here have to go off and live in reservations and work on casinos, then you might have the beginnings of a point. But that's what I love about this place. It's the centre of so many key issues, employment and immigration and historical issues and so on. It's been the heart of world affairs for hundreds of years, and the political life of this town revolves around building a bypass. That's class. So it was an amazing amazing achievement. The Builder Bypass Party won almost every seat on the council. But the thing is, do they have any other policies apart from building a bypass? I just love the idea of the council meetings. Next on the agenda is how to deal with the graffiti by the swimming pool. Any ideas? We could build a bypass. In a way, I think it's keeping with the spirit of the place, the Builder Bypass Party, that you're miles from anywhere, so you're left alone to do all the things that you like, in a way, different from everywhere else, and it's sort of cheeky, and it's there's something very endearing about that. I think even your football club is brilliant. I looked at the history of Boston Football Club. It's magnificent. According to the Boston Football Club website, at the end of the 1932-33 season, the directors of Boston FC had to wind up the club and take the company into liquidation. In the 60s, financial problems were at such a point they were forced to resign and become amateur while they sorted themselves out. 1996, they came second but couldn't be promoted because they'd made an administrative error. 2002, the manager had to leave because he was banned from football for 20 months. This is a team sponsored by the mafia. One season that Boston was in the Football League, for the whole year, at the bottom of the table, it said, Boston has 4 points deducted for financial irregularities. Of course, the other thing is that Boston has been hugely important and has then disappeared a bit and has come back again, and it goes up and down like that. And you can't help thinking it must be possible that one day Boston will just rise again somehow and be this hugely important city in the world or the whole of space or something in 1,000 years. And then all the people in Boston, Massachusetts will be telling people where they're from, and they're going, yeah, sure, like we're Boston. I know we're not as famous as the place in Lincolnshire. And there'll be a long-running comedy called Cheers, set in the Cheers bar of Boston, Lincolnshire, in which the barman always goes out with teenage girls that he's met in Eclipse. And there's a psychiatrist that makes little quips like, the only erection I've seen in the last 3 months is the stump. And there'll be this bloke who's one of the main characters called Norm, and he'll be a huge fat bloke who makes comments to the barman all the time, like, hey, this beer's perfect for Boston. It comes from the drains and it's perfectly flat.